Dr. Nina Frost brushed the dust away from the ancient metal surface. Her gloved hands moved carefully over the alien script carved into what looked like a warning beacon. She had been working on this dead planet for 3 months now, documenting the remains of a civilization that had vanished thousands of years ago. The ruins stretched across the valley in every direction, silent and empty. Her scanner beeped as it finished translating the text. Nina leaned closer to read the words on her display screen. Her breath caught in her throat. Stay away from Sol 3. They guard something worse than themselves. Nina read it again. Then a third time. Sol 3 was Earth, the home planet of humans. She had met humans before at the Galactic Council stations. They seemed normal enough. A bit nervous maybe, but friendly. Why would an ancient civilization leave a warning about them? She tapped her communicator. Base camp, this is Frost. I need to transmit something to the Council immediately. Priority level. The response came back within seconds. Go ahead, Doctor. Nina uploaded the translation and the images of the beacon. She included all her notes about the site. This civilization had died out roughly 12,000 years ago based on her carbon dating. They had been advanced, possibly more advanced than the current Galactic Council species. And in their final days they had built this beacon to warn others. About Earth. Her communicator buzzed 2 hours later. The face of Council Director Sam Price filled the small screen. His expression was serious. Dr. Frost, we need you to check something for us. Verify your translation is accurate. Run it through 3 different systems if you have to. Nina felt a chill run down her spine. Sir, I already verified it twice. The message is clear. Sam rubbed his face with both hands. He looked tired. 3 other archaeological teams have reported similar findings in the past week. Different planets. Different extinct species. All dead for thousands of years. All left the same message. That's impossible, Nina whispered. These civilizations existed in different time periods. Different parts of the galaxy. They never had contact with each other. I know, Sam said quietly. But they all warned about the same thing. About Earth. About humans guarding something. Nina sat down on a nearby rock. Her mind raced through the possibilities. For separate civilizations. 4 identical warnings. The odds of that happening by chance were astronomical. What do we do? She asked. The council is meeting in 2 days. We need you back here. Bring everything you have on this site. Every scan, every image, every piece of data. The council chamber was packed when Nina arrived. She had never seen so many species gathered in one place. The air hummed with worried conversations in a dozen different languages. She took her place at the presentation podium alongside 3 other archaeologists. One by one they showed their findings. The Kelvin expedition had found warnings on a planet in the northern spiral arm. The Drath team discovered messages carved into a moon base in the outer rim. A solo researcher named Martin Webb had uncovered an entire archive of warnings on an asteroid station. And Nina presented her beacon. All 4 sites. All 4 extinct civilizations. All saying the same thing about Earth. The chamber erupted into debate. Council members shouted questions and theories. Some demanded immediate action. Others called for caution. What are the humans guarding? Demanded Council member Lisa Grant. Her voice cut through the noise like a knife. A weapon of some kind? Plague? An ancient entity? Perhaps they don't even know they're guarding it, suggested another council member. It could be buried deep in their planet. Something left behind by an even older civilization. Or maybe the humans themselves are the threat, someone else said. Maybe these warnings aren't about what they guard, but about them. Nina listened to the theories pile up. None of them felt right. She had studied humans during her time at council stations. They were creative and curious. They told jokes and shared food from their planet. They seemed genuinely excited to meet other species. These weren't the behaviors of a species guarding cosmic horrors. But 4 civilizations had thought differently. 4 advanced species had used their final days to warn the galaxy. That meant something. Sam Price raised his hand for silence. The chamber gradually quieted down. We need information, he said. Real information, not speculation. Someone needs to go to Earth and investigate. The chamber erupted again. Half the council members thought it was too dangerous. The other half argued that ignorance was more dangerous than knowledge. Nina found herself standing up. I'll go. The chamber fell silent. Everyone turned to look at her. I'll lead a reconnaissance mission, Nina continued. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. We'll observe from a distance first. Scan their planet and their system. Look for whatever these civilizations were warning us about. If we don't find anything obvious, we can make contact and ask them directly. Sam studied her face for a long moment. You understand the risk? If these warnings are accurate, you could be putting yourself and your crew in serious danger. Nina thought about the beacon on that dead world. She thought about the civilization that had built it, knowing they were dying, wanting to protect others from whatever they had encountered. I understand, she said. But we can't just ignore this. Those species tried to warn us for a reason. We owe it to them and to ourselves to find out why. The council voted. It was close, but the mission was approved. Nina would take a small research vessel with a crew of 6 specialists. They would investigate Earth and report back. If they found anything threatening, they had permission to retreat immediately. Nina spent the next week preparing. She selected her crew carefully. Scientists who were brave but not reckless. People who could think clearly under pressure. She chose Tom Blake as her sensor officer because he had the best eye for detail she had ever seen. Grace Hill joined as communications officer because she could speak 9 languages and had a gift for understanding alien cultures. On the morning of departure, Sam Price met her at the ship's airlock. Be careful out there, he said. If 4 advanced civilizations felt the need to warn us about Earth, there's something we're not seeing. Something dangerous. Nina nodded. What if we're wrong though? What if humans are just normal people and this is all a misunderstanding? Sam looked at her with sad eyes. Then 4 civilizations destroyed themselves over a misunderstanding. I'm not sure which option is worse. Nina boarded the ship. The airlock sealed behind her with a hiss. Through the viewport she could see the stars waiting. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was the truth behind the warnings. The ship's engines hummed to life. Nina strapped into the captain's chair. Set course for the Sol system, she ordered. The Pioneer jumped to hyperspace, carrying Nina and her crew toward answers. Toward Earth. Toward whatever humans were guarding that had terrified 4 dead civilizations enough to spend their final days warning the galaxy. The Pioneer dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Nina stood on the bridge, staring at the view screen. A yellow star burned in the distance. Somewhere around that star was Earth. All stations begin scanning, Nina ordered. I want every sensor we have pointed at this system. If there's something here, we're going to find it. Tom Blake worked at his station, his fingers dancing across the controls. Screens filled with data as the ship's powerful scanners swept through space. Nina watched the readings scroll past. Energy signatures. Gravitational fields. Radiation levels. Everything looked normal. Scanning Earth now, Tom said. Looking for unusual structures, containment fields, energy barriers. Anything that might indicate what they're protecting. Hours passed. The bridge crew worked in silence, checking and rechecking their readings. Nina felt tension building in her shoulders. They had traveled all this way. 4 dead civilizations had left warnings. There had to be something here. Dr. Frost, Tom said finally. His voice was uncertain. I'm not finding anything. Nina walked over to his station. What do you mean nothing? I mean nothing unusual. Earth reads as a standard inhabited planet. Normal atmosphere. Normal magnetic field. Their space stations are basic designs. I'm checking the moon now, also normal. No hidden facilities. No strange energy readings. What about the outer planets? Nina asked. Underground installations? Tom shook his head. I've swept the entire system 3 times. If they're hiding something, it's either very small or invisible to our scanners. Nina frowned. This didn't make sense. For civilizations wouldn't warn about nothing. She was missing something. Keep scanning, she ordered. Go deeper. Check everything again. Days passed. The crew ran scan after scan. They found human satellites and space stations. Mining operations on asteroids. Research outposts on Mars. Everything was exactly what it appeared to be. No weapons that could destroy galaxies. No containment fields holding back ancient evils. Just humans doing normal human things in space. Grace Hill spoke up from the communication station. Dr. Frost, I've been monitoring Earth's broadcasts while we search. There's something you should see. Grace put the human media feeds on the main screen. Nina watched news programs from Earth flash past. Entertainment shows. Something humans called social media. She had seen broadcasts from other species before, but this felt different somehow. What am I looking at? Nina asked. Grace highlighted several programs. These are human entertainment stories. But look at the themes. This one is about dead people coming back to life and eating the living. They call them zombies. This one shows their entire civilization destroyed by nuclear weapons. This one has artificial intelligence turning against them and killing everyone. Nina stared at the screen. These are just fiction. Every species tells stories about disasters. Not like this, Grace said quietly. She pulled up more examples. Look how detailed they are. Look how many there are. Humans have thousands of stories about their own destruction. Plague scenarios where diseases kill billions. Alien invasions. Robot rebellions. Their sun exploding. Asteroids hitting Earth. Reality itself breaking apart. Tom joined them at the communication station. That's odd, he admitted. Most species tell cautionary tales, but these are specific, detailed. And there are so many of them. Grace kept searching through the human databases. It gets stranger. Look at this. A human organization called the Centers for Disease Control has official protocols for a zombie outbreak. But zombies don't exist. They made plans for something that isn't real. Maybe it's a joke? Nina suggested. I thought so too, Grace said. But then I found their military planning documents. They have contingency plans for scenarios that have never happened. Detailed strategies for fighting enemies they've never encountered. Preparation guides for disasters that haven't occurred. Nina felt a cold sensation in her stomach. She remembered the warnings. They guard something worse. What if the humans weren't guarding a thing? What if they were guarding ideas? Terrible ideas about everything that could go wrong? Show me more, Nina ordered. Grace pulled up files from Earth's networks. Nina watched in growing discomfort as humans discussed every possible catastrophe in incredible detail. They imagined ways their technology could fail. Ways their society could collapse. Ways the universe itself could end. They created entire academic fields dedicated to studying risks that didn't exist yet. They think about the worst things possible, Tom said slowly. Not just think about them. They document them. They plan for them. They make stories about them. But why? Nina asked. What purpose does this serve? Nobody had an answer. Nina made her decision. We need to talk to them directly. Grace, open a channel to Earth's diplomatic services. Official first contact protocols. Tell them we're here on behalf of the Galactic Council and we request a meeting. The response came back within an hour. Earth's United Authority welcomed them. They provided coordinates for a landing site in a place called Geneva. They seemed excited to host visitors. The Pioneer descended through Earth's atmosphere. Nina watched cities pass below. They looked peaceful. Normal. Not like a planet guarding cosmic nightmares. The landing pad was clean and well maintained. A small group of humans waited to greet them. The lead human stepped forward with a smile on his face. He was middle-aged with dark hair starting to gray at the temples. Welcome to Earth, he said in perfect galactic standard language. I'm Peter Chin, liaison for the United Authority. We're honored by your visit. Nina studied his face. He seemed genuinely happy to see them. No fear. No suspicion. Just friendly curiosity. Thank you for receiving us, Mr. Chin, Nina said carefully. We have some questions we need to ask you. Of course, Peter said. Please follow me. We have a conference room prepared. Can we offer you refreshments? We weren't sure what your species requires, but we prepared several options. They walked through the facility. Humans smiled and waved at them. Children in a nearby park stopped playing to stare with wide eyes. Everything felt so normal it made Nina more nervous, not less. The conference room had windows overlooking mountains. Peter served them drinks and made small talk about their journey. He asked about their homeworlds. He seemed genuinely interested in learning about other species. Finally, Nina couldn't wait any longer. She pulled up the translations of the ancient warnings on her tablet and showed them to Peter. We found these messages, she said. 4 different extinct civilizations, all warning the galaxy about Earth. About humans. They all said the same thing. That you guard something worse than yourselves. Peter's smile faded as he read. His confusion looked real. He read the messages twice, then looked up at Nina with genuine puzzlement on his face. I don't understand, he said slowly. We're not guarding anything. We're just people living on our planet. Why would anyone warn about us? Nina leaned forward. That's what we came here to find out. What are you protecting, Mr. Chin? What are you hiding? Peter shook his head. We're not hiding anything. We don't have any ancient weapons. No sealed vaults. No forbidden knowledge. I honestly don't know what these civilizations were talking about. He looked so genuinely confused that Nina almost believed him. Almost. But 4 dead civilizations had thought differently. And Nina was going to find out why. Peter Chin spent the next week taking Nina and her crew through various human facilities. He seemed determined to prove they were hiding nothing. Nina appreciated his openness, but each location they visited made her more uncomfortable instead of less. The first stop was the Global Archive in Switzerland. The building sat in the mountains, built to survive almost any disaster. Peter led them through security and into a massive underground vault. "This is where we keep our historical records," Peter explained. "Scientific research, cultural documents, planning protocols. Everything is backed up here." Nina walked between rows of data storage units. Grace and Tom followed, their scanners recording everything. Peter pulled up files on a display screen. "You mentioned we planned for things that haven't happened," Peter said. "I wanted to show you the context. It's part of how we think." He opened a file dated 1939. Nina read through it slowly. It was a scientific paper by human researchers. They were discussing the theoretical possibility of splitting atoms to release enormous energy. The paper included warnings about using this energy as a weapon. "This was written before we actually built nuclear weapons," Peter said quietly. "We imagined the danger first. Then we made the danger real. But because we imagined it first, we also prepared safety protocols." Tom looked up from his scanner. "You thought of the weapon before you could build it?" "Yes," Peter said. "And we thought of the consequences too. Look at this." He pulled up more documents. Plans for nuclear war. Calculations of casualties. Strategies for survival. All written before the first atomic bomb was ever tested. Nina felt a strange sensation in her chest. "You prepared for your own nightmare." "We always do," Peter said simply. The next day, Peter took them to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. A scientist named Rachel Green met them in a research lab. She was young and energetic, excited to show them her work. "I study pandemic preparedness," Rachel explained. "We model disease outbreaks and plan responses before they happen." She pulled up simulation after simulation on her screens. Each one showed different diseases spreading across Earth. Some were real diseases. Many were theoretical. Some were impossible based on current biology. "This one models a respiratory virus with specific transmission rates," Rachel said, pointing to a complex diagram. "We developed this response protocol in 2015. In 2019, a real pandemic happened. Not exactly like our model, but close enough that our protocols worked." "You planned for it before it existed?" Nina asked. "We planned for everything," Rachel said. "Diseases that don't exist yet. Mutations we've never seen. Biological weapons that haven't been invented. If we can imagine it, we prepare for it." Grace was scrolling through files on her tablet. She looked pale. "You have protocols for diseases that break the laws of biology. Infections that spread through digital networks. Plagues that affect only certain genetic types. These things aren't possible." "Not yet," Rachel agreed. "Maybe never. But if we don't think about them, who will?" The third day brought them to a military research facility. Nina didn't want to go, but Peter insisted. A general named Frank Cole met them at the gate. He was older, with gray hair and tired eyes. "I understand you're wondering what we're protecting," Frank said as he led them inside. "The answer is nothing and everything." He took them to a planning room. The walls were covered with screens showing scenarios. Nina recognized some from human fiction. Robot uprisings. Alien invasions. Reality-breaking physics experiments. "These are our contingency plans," Frank explained. "We call them nightmare scenarios. We pay people to imagine the worst possible things that could happen. Then we make plans to survive them." Tom pointed at one screen. "This scenario involves artificial intelligence becoming self-aware and viewing humans as threats. But you don't have true artificial intelligence yet." "No," Frank agreed. "But we will someday. And when we do, we'll already have containment protocols. Safety measures. Emergency shutdown procedures. We thought of the danger decades ago." Nina stared at the screens. Hundreds of scenarios. Thousands of pages of planning documents. All for threats that didn't exist. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why do this to yourselves? Why imagine all these terrible things?" Frank looked at her with those tired eyes. "Because if we don't imagine them first, we can't prepare. And if we can't prepare, we die when they happen." Peter took them to one more location. A university where human philosophers and scientists studied something they called existential risks. A professor named Alan Wright met them in his office. The walls were covered with diagrams and equations. "My field studies threats to human existence," Alan explained. "Not just likely threats. Possible threats. Theoretical threats. Things that might never happen but could end us if they did. He showed them research papers on stellar collapse, vacuum decay, gray goo scenarios, time paradoxes, and dimensional breaches. Each paper was detailed and thorough. Each one described a different way the universe could end. We've cataloged over 300 distinct scenarios that could destroy Earth or humanity, Alan said. We ranked them by probability and developed mitigation strategies where possible. Nina felt dizzy. 300 ways to die. 300 ways we've thought of so far, Alan corrected. We discover new ones regularly. Last month, a graduate student proposed a scenario involving quantum entanglement cascade failure. We're still working out if it's physically possible. That night, Nina sat in the Pioneer's common room with her crew. Nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Grace broke the silence. They're not guarding something, she said softly. They're thinking about it. All of it. Every terrible thing that could possibly happen. Tom nodded slowly. Their entire civilization is built around imagining catastrophes. They document their nightmares. They plan for disasters that don't exist. They prepare for dangers they invented in their own minds. Nina thought about the warnings. They guard something worse than themselves. She finally understood what the ancient civilizations had meant. They don't guard a thing, Nina said. They guard the concepts, the ideas. They think about darkness so deeply that it becomes real in their planning. They weaponize their own fear. But why would that scare other civilizations? Grace asked. Nina remembered something Rachel had said. Because the ideas spread. When you see human disaster planning, you start thinking about those disasters too. You can't unlearn the nightmare once you've seen it detailed and documented. She pulled up her notes from the dead worlds. Each civilization had encountered humans or human signals. Each one had collapsed shortly after. Not from weapons or diseases. Just from knowing what humans thought about. The warnings weren't about what humans guard, Nina said slowly. They were warnings about what humans think. About what happens when you look too deeply into human catastrophic imagination. It's mimetically dangerous. It changes how you see the universe. Tom looked sick. We've been exposed to it for a week. Their protocols. Their scenarios. I keep thinking about them now. About all the ways things could go wrong. Grace nodded. Me too. I can't stop seeing the simulations. The detailed plans for things that don't exist. It's in my head now. Nina understood. The ancient civilizations hadn't been warning about a weapon or a monster. They had been warning about an idea virus. About the psychological weight of truly understanding how humans think. About nightmares so detailed and documented that they became real in the mind. Humans weren't guarding something worse. They were something worse. A species that turned fear into preparation. That documented every shadow. That made nightmares into protocols. And once you truly understood that, you could never think the same way again. Nina sat in the Pioneer's analysis room, surrounded by data from the 4 dead worlds. She had been awake for 20 hours, cross-referencing timelines and archaeological evidence. Her crew was sleeping, but Nina couldn't rest. Something was forming in her mind. A pattern she didn't want to see. She pulled up the timeline for the first extinct civilization. The Kelvin expedition had dated their collapse to approximately 15,000 years ago. Nina scrolled through the archaeological data until she found what she was looking for. A radio telescope array. Still intact after all those years. She checked its directional logs. It had been pointed at Sol. At Earth. Nina's hands shook as she pulled up data from the second dead world. The Drath civilization had fallen 12,000 years ago. Their final construction projects included a massive deep space listening station. Nina checked its receiver arrays. They had been picking up signals from a very specific region of space. The Sol system. No, Nina whispered. But she kept searching. The third civilization had launched probe networks in their final years. Nina traced their trajectories. Several had been headed toward Earth's region of the galaxy. The fourth civilization had records of receiving strange transmissions. Broadcasts that made no sense to them. Transmissions that contained fictional stories about catastrophes and endings. Human broadcasts. Every extinct civilization had encountered humanity somehow. Not physically. They had never met humans in person. But they had detected Earth's signals. They had intercepted human transmissions. They had heard the stories and seen the plans and read the protocols. And then they had collapsed. Nina checked the archaeological evidence more carefully. None of the civilizations showed signs of war. No invasion. No plague. No natural disaster. Their infrastructure was intact. Their cities were empty but undamaged. The populations had simply stopped. stopped building, stopped reproducing, stopped maintaining their societies. They had given up. Grace walked into the analysis room, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Dr. Frost? It's 4 in the morning. You should rest. I found the pattern, Nina said. Her voice sounded hollow. The civilizations didn't die from external threats. They died from us. From knowing about us. Grace sat down slowly. What do you mean? Nina showed her the data. The timelines. The listening stations. The intercepted transmissions. They heard human broadcast. They learned how humans think. How we plan for every disaster. How we imagine every nightmare in perfect detail. And it broke them. That's not possible, Grace said. Ideas can't destroy a civilization. Can't they? Nina pulled up the human protocols they had been shown. We've been exposed to human thinking for a week. You said yourself you can't stop thinking about their scenarios. About all the ways things could go wrong. Now imagine a whole civilization trying to process that information. Trying to understand why humans document every possible catastrophe. Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke softly. We would try to prepare too. We would look at our own vulnerabilities. Our own ways to fail. We would see threats everywhere. Yes, Nina said. And unlike humans, we didn't evolve to handle that kind of thinking. Humans developed catastrophic imagination over millions of years. It's built into their psychology. But for other species, it's poison. A mimetic hazard that rewrites how you see the universe. Tom entered the room. He looked like he hadn't slept well either. I had nightmares, he admitted. About the scenarios. The vacuum decay. The dimensional breach protocols. I keep thinking about ways the ship could fail. Ways we could die out here. Nina nodded grimly. 1 week of exposure and we're already affected. Those civilizations were exposed for years. Decades maybe. They couldn't escape it. The knowledge changed them. Made them paranoid. Made them see their own fragility too clearly. So they left warnings, Grace said. Not about what humans guard but about what humans are. About the danger of thinking like they do. Nina started composing a report for the council. But before she could finish, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. Tom ran to the bridge with Nina and Grace right behind him. What's happening? Nina demanded. Tom's fingers flew across his controls. I'm getting alerts from the council network. Some kind of spatial anomaly detected near council headquarters. I don't know what it is. The readings don't make sense. Nina watched the data scroll across her screen. Energy signatures that violated known physics. Space itself was twisting in impossible ways. Whatever it was growing. It looks like quantum foam cascade, Tom said. His face was white. But that's theoretical. It's not supposed to be possible. The communications channel exploded with panicked voices. Council ships were trying to contain the anomaly. Nothing was working. The phenomenon was expanding, threatening to consume the entire council station and everyone on it. Nina grabbed the comm. This is Dr. Frost on the Pioneer. Patch me through to Earth. Now. Peter Chin appeared on screen within minutes. Behind him, Nina could see humans rushing around with tablets and displays. They already knew about the crisis. We're seeing the readings, Peter said quickly. We're pulling up our files now. Your files? Nina asked. Quantum anomaly protocols, Peter explained. We theorized about this kind of event 30 years ago. Developed 12 different containment strategies. Never thought we'd actually need them. Nina felt a strange mixture of horror and hope. You planned for this? For something that shouldn't be possible? We planned for everything, Peter said. He was reading data quickly. Okay, this matches our Model 7 scenario most closely. Quantum entanglement cascade with localized space-time distortion. The council ships are using the wrong approach. They're trying to stop it with force. That will make it worse. Another human scientist appeared next to Peter. We need to stabilize the quantum foam, not disrupt it. Send them these frequencies. The harmonic resonance should collapse the cascade without spreading it further. Nina transmitted the human protocols to the council ships. At first, nobody wanted to listen. They didn't trust strategies from a species they had just started investigating. But as the anomaly grew larger, desperation won out. The council ships adjusted their containment fields according to human specifications. They broadcast the harmonic frequencies. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the anomaly began to shrink. Nina watched her screens as the impossible phenomenon collapsed in on itself. Within an hour it was gone. Space returned to normal. The council station was safe. The communications channel was silent. Then Sam Price's face appeared. He looked shaken. The human protocols worked, he said quietly. They had detailed strategies for something that we didn't even know could happen. Something that shouldn't exist according to our physics. Peterson spoke up from Earth. We imagined it could exist. Back in 2031, a theoretical physicist named Dr. Sarah Martinez proposed this exact scenario. Everyone said it was impossible. We made containment plans anyway. Tom stared at his display. You saved us with a nightmare you invented. That's what we do, Peter said simply. We think about the worst. We document it. We prepare for it. So when it happens, we're ready. Nina looked at her crew. They all understood now. The ancient civilizations had seen this too. They had learned about human catastrophic thinking. But instead of understanding it as a survival trait, they had only seen the darkness. They had looked into the human imagination and seen nothing but endings and disasters and detailed plans for every terrible thing. It had destroyed them psychologically. They couldn't bear knowing what humans knew. Couldn't live with seeing the universe through human eyes. So they had left warnings and then faded away. But the warnings were incomplete. They said humans guard something worse. They never said that the something worse was also humanity's greatest gift. The ability to imagine darkness so completely that when it arrived, humanity was already waiting with a plan. Nina stood before the Galactic Council 3 days later. The chamber was even more crowded than her first presentation. News of the quantum anomaly had spread across council space. Everyone wanted to understand what had happened and how humanity had known how to stop it. Sam Price sat in the director's chair, his expression unreadable. Nina had submitted her full report the night before. She knew it would cause controversy. The truth always did. Dr. Frost, Sam said formally, please present your findings on the Earth investigation. Nina activated the holographic display. Images of the 4 dead worlds appeared, rotating slowly above the chamber floor. These civilizations didn't die from war or plague or natural disaster. They died from exposure to human thinking. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Nina continued before anyone could interrupt. Each civilization intercepted human transmissions. They learned about human catastrophic planning. They saw the detailed protocols for every possible disaster. And they couldn't handle it psychologically. She showed the timeline data, the listening stations, the correlation between human signal detection and societal collapse. Humans evolved catastrophic imagination over millions of years. It's woven into their biology. They can think about terrible things without breaking. But for species that didn't evolve this trait, exposure to human nightmare documentation is mimetically hazardous. Council member Lisa Grant stood up. Are you saying human thoughts are dangerous? That we should quarantine Earth? I'm saying it's complicated, Nina replied. She pulled up footage from the quantum anomaly crisis. 3 days ago, an impossible phenomenon nearly destroyed this station. Human protocols saved us. Protocols they developed decades ago for something they never thought would happen. She showed more examples. Pandemic responses, containment strategies, disaster recovery plans. All developed before the threats existed. Humanity's curse is also their gift. They imagine darkness before it arrives. They turn fear into preparation. When the universe presents a nightmare, humans already have a plan. Tom Blake stepped forward to support her testimony. I've analyzed human psychological profiles. Their anxiety and paranoid thinking would be considered disorders in most species. But for humans it's adaptive. They survive by imagining how to die and then preventing it. Grace Hill added her observations. Human fiction is full of apocalypse scenarios. Their entertainment is based on catastrophe. It seems disturbing until you realize it's how they process and prepare. They make nightmares into stories so they can learn from them. The chamber erupted into debate. Some council members wanted to classify Earth as a threat. Others argued humans had just proven their value. The argument went in circles for hours. Finally, Sam Price called for order. Dr. Frost, what is your recommendation? Nina took a deep breath. We need to acknowledge both sides of this reality. Humans are dangerous to encounter if you're not prepared. Their way of thinking can break unprepared minds. The ancient civilizations learned this the hard way. But humans are also potentially the most valuable species in the galaxy for threat response. She pulled up her formal recommendation. I propose a new classification for Earth. Not a threat level. Not a protection status. Something unique. The words appeared on the holographic display. Nightmare Sentinels. What does that mean? Lisa Grant asked. It means we recognize what humans are, Nina explained. They stand watch against darkness by imagining it constantly. They document every possible threat so the rest of us don't have to live with that burden. But interaction with them requires psychological preparation. We need to understand their thinking before we expose ourselves to it. She outlined a framework: controlled contact with humanity, psychological screening for species that wanted deeper interaction, training programs to help other species understand human catastrophic imagination without being overwhelmed by it, and most importantly, consultation protocols so the Council could access human threat analysis when needed. We almost lost this station because we didn't know quantum foam cascade was possible, Nina said. Humans knew. They always know. Because they imagine everything. We need that knowledge. But we need to access it carefully. The Council voted on her proposal. It passed but barely. Earth would be designated as Nightmare Sentinels. A protected status that acknowledged both the danger and value of human thinking. Other species could visit Earth, but only with proper preparation and psychological evaluation. Nina transmitted the decision to Peter Chin. He appeared on her screen looking thoughtful. Nightmare Sentinels, he said slowly. I'm not sure if that's an honor or an insult. It's the truth, Nina replied. Your species imagines terrible things so the rest of us don't have to. You stand watch against darkness by thinking about it constantly. That's valuable. But it's also dangerous for unprepared minds. Peter nodded. I understand. We've seen the data you sent about the extinct civilizations. We never meant to harm them. We were just being ourselves. Broadcasting our stories and plans into space. I know, Nina said gently. But now we all understand better. Your broadcast will be classified as Mimetic Hazard Level 3. Species will need clearance before accessing them. And the Council will establish a formal liaison program with Earth for threat consultation. So we're the galaxy's nightmare experts, Peter said with a slight smile. Could be worse. Nina's crew prepared to leave Earth orbit. They had spent 2 weeks investigating and another week helping establish the new protocols. Nina was ready to go home, but she wanted to see Earth one more time before they left. She found Peter Chin standing in an observation lounge at the United Authority facility. He was looking down at Earth through the large windows. The planet looked beautiful from orbit. Blue and white and green. Peaceful. Does it bother you? Nina asked, standing beside him. Being classified as dangerous? Peter was quiet for a moment. We've always known we think differently. We've met enough other species now to see the difference. Most people in the galaxy don't spend their time imagining worst-case scenarios. They don't document every possible disaster. They don't plan for threats that don't exist. But you do, Nina said. Yes, Peter agreed. We do. And I used to think maybe it was a flaw. A problem with human psychology. But seeing how we stopped that anomaly, maybe it's not a flaw. Maybe it's what we're supposed to do. Nina thought about the ancient civilizations. How they had crumbled under the weight of human thinking. Your gift destroyed 4 advanced species. I know, Peter said sadly. That's a heavy burden to carry. But if we stopped thinking this way, who would imagine the dangers? Who would prepare for impossible threats? Someone has to stand watch. Someone has to think about the worst. He looked at Earth with something like affection mixed with sadness. It might as well be us. We're built for it. Our anxiety and paranoia and constant disaster planning. It makes us miserable sometimes, but it also makes us survivors. And apparently it makes us useful to the galaxy. Nina understood. Humans would never stop imagining catastrophes. It was coded into their DNA. Millions of years of evolution had made them this way. They would continue to document nightmares and develop protocols and plan for impossible threats. It would cause them stress and fear and sleepless nights. But it would also save lives. When the universe presented something terrible and unexpected, humanity would already have thought of it. Already have a plan. Already know what to do. Nightmare Sentinels, Peter said softly. We'll wear that title. We'll keep thinking about the darkness so others don't have to. We'll keep planning for disasters that probably won't happen. And when they do happen, we'll be ready. Nina left Earth feeling strange. She had come looking for a threat. She had found something more complex. A species that was both dangerous and essential. A civilization built on fear that transformed that fear into protection. The Pioneer jumped to hyperspace, carrying Nina and her crew home. Behind them, Earth continued its orbit around the sun. And on that blue planet, humans continued doing what they always did. Imagining the worst. Documenting the darkness. Preparing for nightmares that hadn't arrived yet. Standing watch while the rest of the galaxy slept peacefully, unaware of all the terrible things that could go wrong. Someone had to think about it. Might as well be them.